UFC Edmonton. These are the full card predictions and the betting breakdown. I'm looking forward to talking about each of the matchups on this card. So make sure you guys smash the like button. If you're new, subscribe, turn the post notifications on, and make sure you share the video too. And also note, Fight Companion, Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be live for the entire card. Very excited to drop more fire play-by-play this weekend. And really looking forward to actually a really good fight night. So let's jump into it. First fight on the card, we have Jack Shore versus Youssef Zalal. I'm going with Youssef Zalal. I think he's a special talent. And we've seen him grow since his initial release from the UFC. Fighting his way back, looking really good outside of the UFC. And then coming back and destroying Billy Q, finishing him. And then going out there and wrecking Jarno Aaron's easy submission. I think that Youssef Zalal is a guy who always has had a lot of promise. I remember when he fought Ilia Topuria. And you know what? I might look like a fool then, or rather now, seeing that I picked Zalal back then. But it's not so much of, oh, it's a horrible pick is why I mentioned it. It's more of, I saw promise in his skills. And even though, yes, Topuria turned out to be potential featherweight GOAT, I still think Youssef Zalal is a guy that has top 10 ability, and he always has seemed to be good. It's just like he couldn't figure it out with the damn early run in the UFC. The comeback has been whole different vibes. I think Youssef Zalal is going to wreck Jack Shore. Jack Shore is an okay striker. He's kind of skinny fat, though. He's a former bantamweight. Kickboxing is okay. Decent strikes from range. His punches are, I don't know, they're kind of fast, I would say. I don't want to wreck Jack Shore. He's got decent low kicks, and he's got solid submissions. He's good at jiu-jitsu, but, like, I think he's a bantamweight that's not wanting to cut weight anymore. And he has one of the worst physiques in MMA, specifically in the bantamweight division. I guess not MMA, because there's some worse examples of bad physiques in MMA. But Jack Shore definitely has, low muscle density for a featherweight. And on the opposite side, you got Youssef Zalal, who's an incredible athlete, very well-rounded, good submission skills, good kickboxing skills, very fast. He's a Moroccan kickboxer at heart, but he's developed very good grappling. And he also has a nice body triangle, good control, and submission threats. It's not crazy for Youssef Zalal to sub a Jack Shore. I'm calling Youssef Zalal to win, and I feel pretty damn good about it. He deserves this type of tag against Jack Shore. He's minus 245. Opening odds had him at minus 175. He deserves to be a favorite here. Zalal is showing a lot of upside and potential, and I think Jack Shore could potentially be on the chopping block. Maybe not this fight, but if he loses one more hereafter, I think he really needs to dial in and get back down to bantamweight, because I don't think he's a real featherweight. Plus 210 for Shore. Jack Shore, last time out, remember his shin got completely destroyed by Joe Anderson Brito. So he's looking to come back against a savage Moroccan, literally the Moroccan devil himself. Not going to work well. Over 2.5 is minus 235. I think it is live for a finish. I know Jack Shore does have relatively crafty jiu-jitsu, but Youssef Zalal is a lot quicker in transition on the ground, and he's a lot better of an athlete, and he's physically stronger. Lots to like on the side of Youssef Zalal here. I think he's on his way to winning. Higher upside potential. Seems like his trajectory is going towards top 10, whereas I think Jack Shore's best bet is to hire a new nutritionist or something and get down to 135 pounds. Youssef Zalal for the win, starting it off, and then he's going to make it 3-0 on his UFC comeback run, and you got to keep an eye out. And even one of his losses, Sean Woodson, split decision? He was competitive with him, and now Sean Woodson's in the top 15. I think Youssef Zalal has always been promising, but now has fine-tuned the skills enough to take this thing far. And Jack Shore, I don't think he's going to be ready for him. Youssef Zalal for the win. Let's keep running. Next fight on the card. Ladies going after it. Jamie Lynn Horth versus Ivana Petrović. I'm going with Ivana Petrović. I think she is alive to win this fight in grappling, but I don't really look at either one of these girls, if you're on the betting side, as good investments per se. I mean, you're going to lay chalk, minus 200 for Jamie Lynn? Good luck. You want to attack an underdog? Okay, Petrović maybe. She's got the Croatian blood. She's got a cool last name. Her name's Ivana. I just think neither one of these girls have impressed me. I mean, relatively speaking, Jamie Lynn Horth's win over the overrated Haley Cohen was impressive at the time. And then she took Vanessa Machado on, I believe. Let me double check. Yeah, Veronica Hardy, Vanessa Machado. Veronica Hardy on, formerly Veronica Machado, I think. And she kind of got outworked. She got out kickboxed. She got touched by the quicker striker. Couldn't really find success in grappling. I found out that night that Jamie Lynn Horth is kind of just a pressuring fighter that doesn't have any like unique skills. To be honest with you, she doesn't shine anywhere. She's kind of well-rounded. She's kind of strong. She's got okay striking. You know, she's got volume on her side. And Ivana Petrović, I got to say, watching some regional tape, I'm like, okay, she does have relatively impressive jiu-jitsu. Relatively. Not saying that it's jumping off the page as top 10 material. No. She got a loss in her debut to Luana Carolina, but she did get a win last time out against Na Liang by sub. Granted, Na Liang is one of the worst fighters in women's MMA because all she does is panic wrestle early and then gas late. But regardless of that, I think Petrović with the length advantage could be good from distance. I think she's a little bit cleaner in striking, and I do think she's a little better at jiu-jitsu, but Jamie Lynn Horth might be a little stronger. Maybe is better at wrestling, but I'm not so sure. I'm going to go with Ivana Petrović to find a way to win. I think she gets it done. The odds, how are you minus 200 for Jamie Lynn Horth? I know we're in Canada, but how is she minus 200? That makes no sense to me at all. Plus 170 for Petrović. I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, between the two, the highest level of opposition was Petrović versus Luana Carolina. Carolina, say what you want about her awkward style. She does have some wins in the UFC. Minus 400 for the over 2.5. Probably going long with the ladies. I'm going to pick Ivana Petrović. She's probably going to get a decision here. For entertainment value, I will hope for a submission finish for Petrović, but I will say it's highly likely that Ivana Petrović is going to win this fight on the judges' scorecard. So Petrović for the W. I think she's pulling through and getting it done here. Let's keep on running up. Our next fight on the card, we got Chad Anheliger versus Cody Gibson. I'm going with Cody Gibson over Chad Anheliger. I think Canada's going to take another L. Cody Gibson honestly has a British kickboxing style. He kind of reminds me of like a damn bantamweight Darren Till at times. He looks like him a little bit. Good pressuring straight shots, decent kicking skills, a nice jab from the outside, and he's a relatively well-rounded guy. And I have to say, I give Cody Gibson a lot of respect because on the regional scene, he did beat, I guess technically might not be regional scene, but on the lower level scene, he beat John Dodson at one point, and John Dodson's a fucking savage, okay? John Dodson's a guy who's fought for the belt twice, and I don't think he was like completely washed when he lost to Gibson. Gibson also was a finalist on The Ultimate Fighter. He did lose to Brad Katona, though. In a competitive fight, he kind of did bad in the later stages of it, but they were scrapping a lot. And Anheliger is a tricky guy to deal with. He's got good volume strikes, nasty leg kicks, good cardio. He comes with a lot of striking pressure, and he is pretty decent at wrestling. He's got nice scrambles as well, and he's kind of quick on the ground, and I think that this fight's going to be pretty competitive. I'm going to say this is a high likelihood of entertainment. I think Gibson, with the range advantage, can do a bit more damage, but I do think it's a fight that's like a 29-28. I don't think he washes Chad Anheliger. I think Anheliger will rip him with some heavy calf kicks. I think he might catch him with a couple looping shots. He'll look to engage in wrestling. I think Gibson will be able to fend off wrestling, maybe even end up on top. And then from distance, I think Gibson lands the better strikes. I really think this could end up being an early fight of the night. So I'm going to go with Gibson to find a way to win. He is coming off a W. He easily beat Brian Kelleher. Gibson's got long arms, which makes the submission threat live. Chad Anheliger does have the loss to Jose Johnson in the third round recently by sub, and another guy that's a long bantamweight, similar to Cody Gibson. Last time out, he beat Charalampos Gregorio in a relatively competitive fight, but he definitely put it on Gregorio. I think Anheliger is good at beating the guys that are like real, I want to say raw. I'm going to absolutely shaft Gregorio, but pretty back-end guys and Anheliger can beat. Like he beat a Jesse Strader, right? Okay, Jesse Strader is not UFC level. Loses to Elatong Haley. Loses to Jose Johnson. Probably loses to Cody Gibson as well. Cody Gibson's losses, Miles Johns, not a bad loss. Brad Katona as of recent, and that was the Ultimate Fighter finale. So You can't knock him. And a Ray Borg loss in Eagle FC, again, you can't really knock that either. So I think Cody Gibson should win in a relatively competitive fight. He gets the better of the Canadian Chad Anheliger. But I do think Anheliger shows out for the Canadian fans, and I think it's competitive. Now, as far as the odds, Anheliger an underdog, plus 165. Cody Gibson at minus 190 is the favorite. I am going to go with the minus 190 favorite. I'll anticipate all 3 rounds. Minus 245 for the over 2.5. I think it is live to go into the later stages, though Jose Johnson did sub up. Anheliger on the side of Cody Gibson, let me double check. 5 submission wins, but he's also lost by sub 4 times. Anheliger on the opposite front, he's lost 6 submission losses. I guess this submission prop might be something to glance at simply because Anheliger has shown a vulnerability against guys with decent submission skills, and Gibson's got 5 wins by sub, but I don't really think he's like a submission maestro. But granted, Jose Johnson isn't either, and Jose Johnson was able to submit Chad Anheliger, so fair points. Gibson for the win, regardless of how it ends. I think he's getting his hand raised at the end of it. So let's keep running. Next fight on the card, we have Sidey versus Garrett Armfield. Now, looking at this fight just without any research, I was like, man, I think Armfield can beat him. But then I went and watched the Ramon Tavares fight, and I sat on it. I watched some regional tape of Sidey, and I'm like, damn, I'm going to go with Sidey to win. Also because he's now working with MMA Lab a bit. He was doing the end of his camp there, training alongside some of the better bantamweights in the world. I mean, MMA Lab has some good fighters over there. Say what you want about Kyler Phillips recently. He's still in the top 15. Mario Batista, as much as we shaft the performance against Aldo, he's still a top 15 guy. Sean O'Malley, you know, other names too that I'm sure I'm leaving out. Marcus McGee. Garrett Armfield, he's got decent boxing and he's scrappy. He mixes it up nice on the inside, but he does have long arms, so it's like close range straight shots is where he finds success against some of the guys that are the same height as him. This is the thing. Even though you look, oh, well, the reach is only 2 inches, Sidey has very good kicking skills, and he's going to have a massive advantage in length if you include leg length as a factor, right? That's something that I believe needs to be measured. It's kind of an overlooked statistic. Leg length for a kicker is a very valuable asset. Garrett Armfield taking on a guy with this range advantage who's a promising prospect, and I know he lost to Ramon Tavares, but for a second, we have to really sit down and look at the intangibles leading up to it. Tavares missed weight, 4 pounds. And to be fair, Tavares was kind of given the decision in a close fight. It could have gone either way, but I think Sidey could have got it, and it ended up going the way of Tavares. And Sidey finished very strong. Sidey has proven that he's got the gas tank to go into the later stages. Garrett Armfield's a good scrapper. I like Garrett Armfield's boxing skills. Now, the area where I think Sidey would be most vulnerable against some of these guys in the bantamweight division, especially forthcoming if he gets through an Armfield, is in wrestling positions, okay? Takedown defense, scrambles on the ground. Those type of positions could give him some trouble. The thing is, I don't rate Garrett Armfield as a very good wrestler. He's a decent grappler, but I emphasize the word decent because he's not known for dominant offensive grappling. I mean, Brady Heastand last time put it on him with grappling. Yes, he dropped Brady Heastand, to be fair, but Heastand still put it on him. Sidey, on the opposite side, kickboxing style, gonna be hard to get a hold of and take down for Armfield's level of grappling. I think Sidey will have striking success from range. I'm sure Armfield will have moments in the fight, but I think Sidey's probably gonna win it. When you look at their striking styles side by side, you can do this if you're watching tape, is put the fights right next to each other. Watch Armfield striking as of recent and watch Sidey striking. And tell me the offensive moments, okay? It doesn't look slicker for Sidey. He doesn't seem to have a more upside promising potential as a fighter in this bantamweight division. I think he does. The Ramon Tavares loss is very unfortunate, but he did beat Tavares by knockout on Contender Series and then loses a somewhat controversial decision in a UFC debut. I guess I'm just not ready to write him off when I've grown an appreciation for the skills here, and we're in Canada. The Canadian crowd behind him. Right now, Sidey is one of Canada's last hopes, okay? They need some wins. I think that Sidey is going to beat Garrett Armfield in a tricky fight. Armfield's good. He's got nice pressure attacks. He's got clean, straight punches, more from the yellow range, though, right? The yellow zone, more from mid-range. Not going to be able to touch him up from long range. From the long range, Sidey has an advantage. From the mid-range, I think Sidey is a little bit quicker with his hands as well, though Armfield is clean. In close range, I could see Armfield ripping some big hooks, but I don't necessarily think that is his strength of his striking game. I don't really rate him as a great inside boxer, right? I think Sidey's going to be able to take it on the scorecards here in a rather competitive fight using his length, landing cleaner kicks, landing cleaner punches, and in a competitive battle, I do think he's going to get his first UFC win against a tricky fighter in Garrett Armfield. And a lot of the times I back Armfield. I like his style. He's got a win over Brad Katona, but Brad Katona has a 64-inch reach. Sidey has a 72. It's a completely different matchup because I think people will say, well, Garrett Armfield beat Brad Katona, who won the Ultimate Fighter, who beat Cody Gibson. Shouldn't that give him a win over Serhiy? This is why it's not about MMA math. You can use matchup-specific MMA math per se. Now, if you did that, you would say, oh, well, Onama did beat Armfield, and he's a lot taller. He's kind of a more long frame. Granted, he's a weight class heavier, but you can't really match that up either. I think Sidey's slicker kickboxing and distance striking will give him the win at the end of it, and that is why I'm going to pick his side. Now, as far as the odds, it's minus 160 for Sidey, plus 140 for Armfield. I like the chances of Sidey taking it home, but I will say, hasn't won a UFC fight yet. He needs to show out. I think it's going over 2.5, probably at minus 170. In a good scrap, I think Sidey takes it home. I'm excited to see his overall game. I want to see more. He's got KO power, but Armfield's got, relatively good chin. If you look how Armfield's losing fights, just to bring it up, it's never knockout. 3 submission losses, 1 decision. And I think the Sidey fight is probably another decision loss. So Serhiy Sidey for the win, and I think it's going to be on the judges' scorecards. Let's keep on running up. Our next fight on the card is in the heavyweight division. We got Alexander Romanov versus Rodrigo Nascimento. Battle of flawed fighters. I think Romanov by decision. That's going to be my official pick. I really have never been a big believer in Nascimento, and at one point, I thought Romanov was good. I liked him when he was 235 pounds. I was cool with it at 240, but the dude is just eating too much, man. Holy shit. Romanov is again 265. He's got weight issues. Like, I swear to you, bro, if there's ever a UFC fighter that could be successful in MMA and on The Biggest Loser, it's probably Alexander Romanov. No, you know what? I'm giving him a hard time. Romanov's got beastly wrestling, and that fat gut sometimes can help from top position, but questionable cardio, and also I have to question the work ethic in the training room and the heart. I think that Romanov is a guy that kind of loses focus in fights. Gas tank is not necessarily great. Does have a decision win recently against Blagoy Ivanov. Blagoy Ivanov's a former Sambo grappler, or Sambo fighter, I should say. He was a high-level Sambo fighter. Obviously, he was a former World Series of Fighting heavyweight champ. I'm not forgetting that. And a long-time UFC vet. Romanov was able to take him down and control a bit. Nascimento, my God, I don't know. I look at him, I'm like, how is he top 15? I'm never impressed by Nascimento. He's barely beating Tanner Bozier. He's barely beating Ilir Latifi, and he's taken down twice in that fight. I think Alexander Romanov is going to land takedowns. I think he'll garner control time. It's hard to say a Romanov finish, but when he's at his best, he is live for a finish from top. But Nascimento is known for relatively good jiu-jitsu skills, especially for the heavyweight division. I just think he's going to be at a disadvantage in wrestling. The biggest worry with Romanov, though, is that gas tank. If he gets tired halfway through the second round, he can't land a takedown. He's stuck striking. As much as I will harp that Nascimento is not a powerful guy, I don't think it's going to take a ton of power to put a tired Romanov out of there. I think it's going to take clean and accurate strikes, and he could overwhelm him with volume shots. So there is worry on the side of Romanov. I don't think this is a clear path, and it's not because Romanov doesn't have the skills. If Romanov, I knew for a fact, was training properly, if he was 240 pounds, I think I'd be easily picking Romanov. But the fact is, he shows up hot and cold. I mean, he looked pretty good, even in loss to Marcin Tybura. We won that first round, 10-8. Like, very few guys are bodying Marcin Tybura in wrestling like that. But then, he loses that fight on a close decision, which he should say, okay, you know what, just keep doing my thing. Then he fucking shows up at 265 and gets killed by Volkov. And then he shows up at 265 again, and he gets, a decent enough decision over Blagoy. And then he comes in 265 and got easily whooped by Jailton Almeida. He looked like an absolute can on the ground with him. So it's just Romanov is too fucking unreliable. But I am picking Romanov because I don't think Nascimento's very good. I've never been impressed with him. He's kind of a clunky striker. He's kind of got the knock knees. He doesn't have a lot of punching power. I can't pick Nascimento. I'd rather pick Romanov. Plus 105 Romanov, minus 125 Nascimento. Romanov opened as a 3-1 favorite. Who the fuck is confidently betting Nascimento down, though? Oh, my God. That's crazy. The line movement's insane. Over 1.5, minus 170. I lean yes on the over 1.5 because I think Romanov, at the very least, in the first 7.5 minutes of the fight, is successful with wrestling. If he gets tired, he could be in trouble. But I do think Nascimento ends up on his back. Though Nascimento has decent heavyweight grappling, the wrestling edge is with Romanov. And you know what? Nascimento is really not a great striker. He's got okay straight shots. He's got okay boxing. But it's slow, it lacks power and speed, and I just don't think that he can deal with the wrestler. So I'm going with Romanov. I'm going with, Mickey D's King Kong, bro. And I think he wins this thing. Give me Romanov for the W. Let's keep on running. Next fight on the card, we got Charles Jourdain versus Victor Henry. This fight is cool because it's at bantamweight. Charles Jourdain is dropped in weight. And yes, I'm picking Charles Jourdain to whoop Victor Henry. I'm a Charles Jourdain believer for the most part. I would consider myself a lot of the time a Charles Jourdain fan and a disappointed Charles Jourdain fan that simply he can't live up to like the expectation. And maybe it's because he's always been in the wrong weight class, right? He's been at 145 his whole UFC career, and deciding to drop down to 135 pounds could be the best decision ever. Now, we don't know. Is the weight cut going to be too much for him? Maybe. I checked out his Instagram, and he does look leaner, and he looks still muscular. He actually looks like he put on muscle, but that's kind of the visual illusion of losing body fat. You look more muscular as you really are smaller. I think Charles Jourdain, with his explosive striking, can give a lot of problems to Victor Henry striking, who is relatively good on the feet. He's kind of slick. He switches stances nicely. He's got decent straight shots. I mean, he knocked out, Haniyaya last fight. He beat Hayani Barsalos in his UFC debut on a big upset. Victor Henry is not bad. I just think that Charles Jourdain still has promise. He's only 28. He's nearly 29. It's almost his birthday fight day. So let's say he's about to be 29. He's still emerging into his prime right now. And with explosive striking, good kicking skills, nice dexterity. He's got dangerous kicks overall. And I think also a pretty quality gas tank as well as a well-rounded tool set. I really think Charles Jourdain should beat Victor Henry. I'm going to pick Charles Jourdain to win. And I think that it's a little bit surprising to see these odds even, simply because Charles Jourdain's done good work before at 145. I thought he would be a minus 200 favorite. Interesting at minus 110 on both fronts. Very interesting. We'll look at the over. Over is minus 265. Man, I would love to see Charles Jourdain drop down to 135 and get a knockout win over Victor Henry. But to be fair, Victor Henry has not been finished as a professional, and that will probably be a lot easier said from me than done by Charles Jourdain. Either way, I do think Charles Jourdain does damage in the fight. I do think Charles Jourdain wins this fight. I'm going to take him to get it done over Victor Henry. So we're going with Charles Jourdain. I'm going to say that the weight drop is successful. He's going to snap the 2-fight losing streak. Like I said, Sean Woodson split decision. That's not a bad loss. Gene Silva knocking him out, bro, that ain't a bad loss. Gene Silva's a monster. For Victor Henry, it was the Haniyaya win, and then Javid Basharat no contest. Fight before that, the split over Tony Gravely. Charles Jourdain should win this thing. I feel like he's taking it home. Also, Henry's 37. Maybe Charles Jourdain locks up a submission. He does got underrated jiu-jitsu. He's got tricky guillotines. So I'm going with Charles Jourdain to beat a Victor Henry. And I think a successful bantamweight debut is imminent. Let's keep running. Next fight on the card, ladies going after it. We have Ariane Lipski versus Jasmine Jasudavicius. I'm going to be picking Jasmine Jasudavicius, and I'll tell you why. It's because Ariane Lipski has never beaten somebody that's good at wrestling. Like, she doesn't beat girls that are good on the ground. Recent loss to Corinne Silva, good takedowns, grappling control. Lost to Priscilla Cachoeira, which honestly aged like shit. Cachoeira just destroyed her. You look at the 3 wins and you look closely. J.J. Aldridge, Melissa Gatto, Casey O'Neill, okay. So she beat three fighters, which, you know what, the competition rose in each fight. And she showed out against Casey O'Neill. But Casey O'Neill does not have the wrestling ability of a Jasudavicius, though. Casey O'Neill doesn't have the pressure style like her. She doesn't bring a takedown threat to that level. I think that Jasudavicius has a pretty stubborn pressure wrestling style. And she also has relatively good gas tank. And she brings a submission threat, though I don't think it's super likely that she submits an Ariane Lipski. I think more likely she rides her for 3 rounds with a wrestling pressure attack. Ariane Lipski's got good Muay Thai. She's got some submission skills. Not necessarily an A-tier grappler, though. I mean, earlier in her UFC run, she had horrible wrestling defense. It's definitely gotten better, but I don't think it's going to be good enough to deal with a Jasudavicius, who's a relatively decent chain wrestler and good at riding out the positions, wearing opponents down, and getting wins. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to pick Jasudavicius to beat Ariane Lipski, and I think she's going to do it on the scorecards. Probably a 30-27. Submission, not out of this world because she's got good back control, but not super likely. Minus 225 for Jasudavicius, Lipski plus 190. Though Lipski's a good striker, I don't rate her as a power puncher, and I don't think her power is going to be enough to keep Jasudavicius off of her, who's going to be coming with, I'm telling you, a lot of wrestling pressure. Minus 260 for the over 2.5 rounds. We're going with Jasudavicius to get the win in the fight, and I think she's getting it done by wrestling onslaught. And yeah, the ladies are probably going the distance here. Interesting fight, and I think Canada's getting another win with Jasudavicius wrestling her way to a W over the 3 rounds against the striker and Ariane Lipski. Next fight on the card, it's our featured prelim of the night. It's Aiemann Zahabi versus Pedro Munhoz. Talk about a head scratcher. At one point, right, Pedro Munhoz is fighting Jose Aldo, Marlon Vera, Chris Gutierrez. Like, he's amongst the elite, Kyler Phillips. Now he's fighting Aiemann Zahabi. This blew my mind. I'm picking Pedro Munhoz. I think he's going to win this thing. I think Pedro Munhoz has a really good chance to win this as well. Aiemann Zahabi, he's getting a lot of hype built on him right now because of this 4-fight win streak, which is why he got this fight. And he beat Javid Basharat, which, round of applause, respect, okay? Javid Basharat's a talented prospect. He's not as good as his brother Farid Basharat, just to throw that out there. But nice win. In a hard 3-round fight, he ended up getting it done. He stole 2 of the 3, and he gets it on the scorecards. And he looked okay. His striking's good. His hands are all right. I don't think he's super quick, though. I don't think he's great at boxing and close. Fight before that, a Richie Long knockout, that was impressive. He fucking chinned a Richie Long. Fight before that, Ricky Turcios, he was dominant against the Ultimate Fighter winner, but Turcios is kind of overrated, kind of a can. Draco Rodriguez, who's now doing bare knuckle, and he knocked him out. Pedro Munhoz, look at his last few. Kyler Phillips, top 15. Marlon Vera, top 10. Chris Gutierrez, top 15, at least at the time. And he kind of, is the guy that exposed Chris Gutierrez. Sean O'Malley, eye poke, former champ. Dominic Cruz, former champ. And Pedro won, I don't know, I think he was close in that fight. Did he win it? He was close in it. Am I mixing it up? I think I'm mixing it up with the Frankie fight off the top of my head. I think that Pedro Munhoz, though, is still pretty decent. Like, I'm not ready to write him up. I know he's 38, but, Zahabi's 36. He's about to be 37. I don't think that Aiemann Zahabi can keep Munhoz off of him for 3 rounds. Where Pedro Munhoz shines is close-range boxing and mid-range kicking, right? Because he's a little bit of a shorter guy at 5'6", with a shorter reach at 65.5 inches. That does allow him to generate a lot of force on his hooks, mixes up shots to the body and head pretty well. He's comfortable on the feet. He moves really good. I think he's still pretty quick. I think he's at an evident speed advantage. And it's not like Zahabi is great at controlling range with the jab. He likes to throw wide shots too and kind of engage in a fight where Pedro Munhoz can look pretty good. I think Pedro Munhoz could actually land some pretty significant punches in this fight and bust Zahabi up a bit. Knockout, less likely. But Pedro Munhoz does have some power. He knocked out Cody Garbrandt. Was that his last KO win? Yeah, his last KO win was against Cody No Love in 2019. Also knocked out Brian Caraway. Holy shit. Way back in the day. Misha Tate's ex. I think Pedro Munhoz does more damage to Aiemann Zahabi. I think he could hurt him with punches, and I think that at 38, he gets a win here against a guy who I just don't rate as a top 15 level opponent. I don't think Aiemann Zahabi's a top 15 guy. I know he's on a 4-fight win streak, and he's getting the opportunity of a lifetime. He is the brother of Firas Zahabi, if you didn't know, former GSP coach, legendary MMA coach Firas Zahabi. I just don't think he's beating Pedro Munhoz. I'm picking Munhoz to pull through, potentially hurting Zahabi. I'm going to lean decision. But again, for my entertainment, please, knockout. As far as the odds, minus 120? They've come down? Pedro Munhoz is minus 120 against Aiemann Zahabi, and he opened up at plus 135? I'm really surprised. I don't think Aiemann Zahabi's looked that good. I know he beat Javid Bashra, but that doesn't equal a win over Pedro Munhoz. Styles make fights. Plus 100 for Zahabi? Wow. I'm going to go with Pedro Munhoz, man. I'm not ready to say that he loses to somebody outside of the rankings. I don't see it. I think that Pedro's getting his hand raised. Over 2.5 probably at minus 400. Kind of thinking a lot of these prelims are going to go into the later stages, and we might be seeing a decision-heavy card this weekend. I think Pedro Munhoz can snap the 2-fight losing streak, and then I think also on the opposite front, Aiemann Zahabi gets his 4-fight winning streak snapped. Munhoz, with better boxing and close, good low kicks, and a majority of the fight being striking. I would say that's what I'm going to anticipate. I think that the speed advantage and pressure boxing edge for Pedro Munhoz is probably enough for him to take it. So I'm going to go with Munhoz over an Aiemann Zahabi. He's getting it done. Pedro Munhoz to get a win, to close out the prelims. Let's jump to our main card opener. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe it up. We got Mike Malott versus Trevin Giles. I'm picking Mike Malott. You know what's interesting is these two had a grappling match against each other in 2022. Mike Malott won it. He had the back of Giles a couple times, but it ended up going to a decision. It wasn't really a super entertaining grappling match or anything, but they have, they've crossed paths. They felt each other before, their strengths. They've fought in pure grappling before. But in an MMA fight, how's it going to go? I think Malott wins too, and I think with striking, it could be better for him. Now, to be fair, Trevin Giles' most recent fight, do you guys remember when he was touching Prates with big hooks? Like, Trevin Giles was actually looking good against Carlos Prates before Prates ended his life with that straight punch. And I don't know if Trevin Giles can come back the same from that, to be fair. Regardless of how good the striking looked in moments against Carlos Prates, Trevin Giles is susceptible to punches. His chin is a question at this point. He's been knocked out a handful of times. The submission skills of Mike Malott are legit, and even though in pure grappling, maybe Malott didn't find the finish, when you add in ground and pound, when you put it in the cage, things go differently than they do on a grappling mat. It is not the same. MMA Jiu-Jitsu, different than Jiu-Jitsu as a sport. I think Mike Malott is live to win this thing. And I think he is live to win this by submission and finish what started with the grappling match and finish with a submission here. Mike Malott was dominating Neil Magny up until the end where he gets TKO'd. He had good control on the ground and, he was looking good. Mike Malott's got solid wrestling, solid takedowns and control, solid top position work, solid ground and pound, solid submissions. His striking's not bad either. I would say that Mike Malott's a pretty comfortable striker with good speed. I'd say he's got some pop in his hands as well. Now, Giles is an explosive striker. Giles has powerful hooks. Giles closes the gap relatively well. That's something I like about him. He bursts in and out of range at a very good speed. Okay? Give respect. He's loose and comfortable on the feet. But he's going to lose this fight when they entangle in grappling. And I don't think he's going to knock Mike Malott out on the feet. And I think Mike Malott will strike okay with him. I know that the Prates fight, he had good moments, but don't judge him just off the good moment here and then say, okay, because he had good moments versus Prates, now he beats Mike Malott. Carlos Prates is a guy that you can swing wild, sporadic shots on and burst into range on because there is no wrestling threat. When you bring a wrestling threat like Mike Malott is going to, now this striking offense of Trevin Giles is going to be stifled a bit because he can't explode into range with the hips there to be grabbed and taken and thrown to the ground. He can't square up in the same type of manner as opposed to when he's taking on a Prates, he can. Mike Malott for the submission is the pick, and I expect this fight, at least some of it, to take place in the grappling, on the floor. Minus 250 from Mike Malott. I don't think he's getting exposed twice. Plus 210 for Trevin Giles. I think the Canadians are getting some wins. We don't have any over-under action just yet. I'm going to anticipate a Mike Malott second or third round submission, but noting that they have grappled before, I could understand, say, oh, but he survived. He survived in grappling. He can survive and go distance here in MMA. Maybe, but I do think Malott dominates a lot of the fight. Mike Malott to get the win, to bounce back from a rough loss to Neil Magny, and I don't think he's getting exposed here and taking a second loss in a row. I think Mike Malott in Canada gets a nice W for himself. So proper Mike Malott to win the fight. Next fight on the card, we have Marc-Andre Barriault versus Dustin Stoltzfus. Holy shit. This is going to be a good fight. I'm picking Marc-Andre Barriault to win. I just can't pick Dustin Stoltzfus. I know he was landing some decent shots on the feet with Bruno Ferreira, but he still got knocked out by a spinning elbow. Marc-Andre Barriault's a good pressure brawler. He's kind of like a ballroom brawler style. He fights really well on the inside. He likes to bang in close range. And him and Chris Curtis went to war. You go out there and give Chris Curtis a fight like that, I got to give you respect. And now Dustin Stoltzfus style is the matchup that knocks him out. Now, Stoltzfus is a relatively underrated kickboxer, and he is getting better. He's now actually training with Extreme Couture, where Chris Curtis is out of, and Sean Strickland, and plenty of other decent guys in the middleweight division. But I think that Marc-Andre Barriault's pressure and boxing is going to probably overwhelm Stoltzfus. Something about Stoltzfus he does well is strike from the mid-range, the long range, right? The yellow and green zone. But Barriault does a great job of forcing his way into the close range, that red zone, and he mixes it up nicely and really close. And even though he's not an incredibly slick striker, he is very accurate with his hooks in range. And he has power. And he does have a questionable chin, right? In some matchups. But I don't think we should worry too much about the chin. He sat in there and was able to go 3 hard against Chris Curtis, who's actually a knockout artist, right? Pyfer knocked him out. Joe Pyfer has crazy power. Chidi Njokuani caught him with the perfect shot and knocked him out. Chidi Njokuani is freaky. But normally, Marc-Andre Barriault can eat a decent punch. I don't think he's a Glass Joe. On the side of Dustin Stoltzfus, I mean, he's coming off of a knockout loss and a vicious one. Not as vicious as Barriault, who got completely flatlined, but the technique was more violent because it was a spin elbow from Bruno Ferreira that put him out. Don't be surprised when Stoltzfus looks to wrestle. I'm anticipating a Dustin Stoltzfus pressure wrestling attack. The thing is, Marc-Andre Barriault has pretty good defensive wrestling. He's only been submitted 1 time as a pro, and it was against Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, who's an absolute menace with pressure wrestling, levels above what Dustin Stoltzfus is going to bring to the table. So I'll anticipate a good amount of striking, and I have to favor the guy that likes to get down in a brawl over a guy that likes to kickbox from distance and pick his shots. I think Barriault is going to find his way inside. I don't think Stoltzfus has enough power to keep him at bay. Could a weird shot land? Sure, Stoltzfus has a decent elbow. He's got decent front kicks, but he's very upright. And in a sense, he's very stiff. And I think Barriault getting in close on him is going to find success with power shots. And I'm going to say Marc-Andre Barriault gets a highlight reel knockout. Probably in the second or third round, this fight's going to turn into a bit of a brawl. Stoltzfus early, when he has a full gas tank, is going to be able to strike well from range, but it'll slow a tad. Barriault will be relentless, and I think Barriault's going to do damage. I'm going with Marc-Andre Barriault to beat Dustin Stoltzfus, and I will predict knockout. As far as the odds, Marc-Andre is a minus 200 favorite with Stoltzfus at plus 170. During the live stream for UFC 308, I saw couple people saying, yo, Stoltzfus is the dog next week. Good luck if you're on the Stoltzfus dog side, but he's 2-5 in the UFC. His wins are against Punahele Soriano, who dropped him, and Dwight Grant, who had striking success with him too. And I just don't love the chance of it. Just because he had a couple moments against Bruno Ferreira is not going to tell me he's beating Marc-Andre Barriault. Over 2.5 is minus 135. Could be a sweaty over. I say it's going under. I say fight ends inside of the distance. Marc-Andre Barriault to beat Dustin Stoltzfus via KO, in which should be a pretty fun fight. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens between these middleweights, and I do think Barriault's getting his hand raised. Let's keep running up the card. Our next fight, light heavyweights, Kyle Machado versus Brenson Ribeiro. We got to pop the Zin in to break this one down properly. I'm picking Brandon Ribeiro, but there's things that I want to say about Kyle Machado is we are in the unknown with him because he's never fought at 205 as a pro before. Kyle Machado was a kind of chubby Brazilian Peter Griffin looking dude, okay? That's what I would call him. Kyle Machado has shredded up, man. Kyle Machado has taken strength and conditioning incredibly serious, and he has changed his body. Machado's looking lean now. The thing is, I don't know if that equals a win over Brandon Ribeiro, who's a very powerful guy, who's explosive with his hands, who also has decent grappling, and he's easy to write off because, like, oh, Miyang Zhang knocked him out. He's chinny. Dog, Miyang Zhang got a crazy Asian straight, bro. He caught him with the perfect punch. Against Magomed Gadzhiesulov, Ribeiro had moments in the fight. To be fair, Gadzhiesulov grabbed the cage so bad, they probably should have took a point earlier. Kyle Machado's coming off 2 straight losses in the UFC as well. Both guys 0-2 in the UFC, but winners on Contender Series the same season. The power of Machado, I question. Dontel Mays win, and he got touched with some decent shots, but it's Dontel Mays. He looked all right. Mick Park can beat him by a dominant decision. I don't really know how to rate a damn light heavyweight Kyle Machado, though, because we have no idea. Kyle Machado at light heavyweight could be a completely different fighter. Kyle Machado could be 50% better, or it could make no difference. He drops down to 205, and now he's not as big, and he's at a speed and power disadvantage against Brandon Ribeiro, who is a freaking monster offensively. Defensively, maybe not. I'm going with Brandon Ribeiro to win. I think his power is legit. He's got heavy hands and long reach. He brings a threat of grappling. Now, recent, knowledge is we think Kyle Machado's weight loss could potentially make him quicker, but we don't know that for sure, right? It essentially becomes a bit of a guessing game. We don't know how he's going to respond to 205. Looks good in pictures, though. He is a black belt in jiu-jitsu in his own right. Brandon Ribeiro doing a lot of grappling. See it on Instagram as well. Putting in a lot of work, trying to get better on the mat. And he threatened with takedowns against Magomed Gadzhiesulov. I could see Brandon Ribeiro shocking Machado early in this fight and finishing him. I like the power of Ribeiro on the feet. I think Machado, even though he's a former heavyweight, I don't think it's a high likelihood he takes a bomb from Ribeiro. Ribeiro's got some heavy hands. Ribeiro's deceptively explosive. And, he's 6'3". I don't know why I'm saying 6'6". In my brain, I'm thinking he's 6'6". Can you imagine Brandon Ribeiro 6'6"? But he's got an 81-inch reach, right? The 3-inch reach advantage is a factor. I think the explosiveness and power is real. I don't know how Kyle Machado is going to look after the weight cut. We'll see how he looks on the scale officially, but we're going to find out what we need to know when they actually throw down. So evidence will be given to us just how good Kyle Machado is at 205 after this fight. I'm going to pick Ribeiro by knockout, though. Even though Machado's in great shape, I don't know. Machado's striking never really impresses me that much. I honestly have wrote down in the past, I remember doing notes and saying he's a little bit slow. And if you're slow at heavyweight, you might as well be turtle speed in the light heavyweight division. Minus 157 for Machado, Ribeiro plus 137. I think the odds should be essentially even because it's like a relative unknown type of fight. Under 1.5 plus 160. I think there's a high chance of a knockout early in this fight. I think they're going to mix it up quick. I think Ribeiro can land a bomb on Machado and put him out. Ribeiro, obviously, his chin's been cracked before and he's been put to sleep. I'm going to say this fight could end early. Now, normally, Machado is a guy that fights a little bit more into the later stages. And, I mean, his win against Kevin Schlafarski, who's a fat heavyweight, it's, like, impressive in a sense because he's beating a guy so much bigger than him. But it was so boring, man. Maybe I'm just being a Machado hater. We got to see how the physique looks on the scale. But I definitely think that Machado has changed his diet completely. And is that going to equal more speed and power? Maybe. Or he's, looking similar on the feet. And now he's taking on a guy who's more explosive and fast than anybody he's fought in the heavyweight division. So I'm going to pick Brandon Ribeiro to pull it off. We'll see when the cage door closes. And I'm looking forward to seeing a new look Machado and seeing what he's got. Definitely a good move, man, because he's always kind of looked like a light heavyweight with just extra body fat. Next fight, it is our featured bout. Derek Lewis versus Jourdain Diniz. I'm picking Jourdain Diniz over Derek Lewis, man. I tried to pick Derek Lewis, But I said, man, he's got the power for sure, but he's going to need to wing a bomb against a guy who's got numerous amounts of kickboxing fights, but not just like bum kickboxing fights. Like the dude fought Rico Verhoeven. He fought Daniel Guida. Like there's good opposition he's been in there against. And he's in a fight now where there is no threat of takedowns. In Diniz's first 2 UFC fights, he fought guys that wanted to take him to the ground. Derek Lewis is unlikely to be looking for takedowns. Now, maybe if he's really uncomfortable on the feet, he'll shoot. But Derek Lewis is not a high-caliber wrestler. He's a one-punch knockout artist. Now, he also has ferocious ground and pound, though, because if Diniz ends up on his back, Derek Lewis throwing bombs on you, you're in serious trouble. Lewis is the UFC knockout king, and he is massive at 265 pounds normally, and he looks every bit of it because he cuts weight to hit the damn 265 limit. But I do worry that he's slowed a tad. Now, I know he knocked out Nascimento last time. Nascimento was trying to grapple him up, right? Completely different stylistic matchup. When you look recently against strikers like, Serhiy Pavlovich, he was ran through and knocked out. Tai Tuivasa knocked him out. He did land, a beautiful shot and knock out Marcos Rogerio de Lima early in their fight. And I predicted him to win as a dog in that fight. And then before that, he beat Chris Daukaus by knockout. Again, he was a dog. He gets written off a lot and then he comes back. I'm just worried that this is the fight that Derek Lewis loses because Diniz is going to have defensively sound striking. And I don't know. I just feel like he doesn't have the same vulnerabilities. Like, is Lewis going to catch him with a flying knee in 30 seconds and flatten him? Is Derek Lewis going to power bomb him with a big overhand and Diniz is just going to go down? Sure. Could it happen? Right? Derek Lewis has the power to knock out anybody on the roster. It's just Jourdain Diniz is a patient and calculated kickboxer, and he also has the size to match Derek Lewis. He's not undersized. He's 6'4" with a 79.5-inch reach, and he's 255 pounds. He's a legit heavyweight. He's also going to be about 6 years younger, definitely more primed at 8-0 right now. And in the first time in his UFC career, has a very favorable matchup. Derek Lewis has serious power, okay? And if he lands on the chin, he can put you out. But his accuracy to get it there against a former high-caliber kickboxer, maybe not the best kickboxer ever, but Diniz does have quality kickboxing experience. I think it's going to be a little too much for Derek Lewis, especially at this age. At 39 years old, I think Diniz is going to find the Derek Lewis chin. And I think he's going to end up knocking him out. I think Lewis is going to look to throw heavy shots early. I think he's going to look to explode and crack Diniz with huge punches. He's going to come at him a little bit reckless. In doing so, he may get frustrated at the defensive abilities of Diniz as well as tire himself. And then I think Diniz is going to slowly but surely find the accurate and clean shots that are enough to put a Derek Lewis away. I'm going to go Jourdain Diniz to beat Derek Lewis by knockout, which is kind of crazy because I've been a big Derek Lewis believer forever. But I think Diniz has got the defensive abilities, man. And I think Lewis definitely has the power. But how does he deal with a guy that's going to be able to avoid his knockout shots and then hits him with the clean one? I don't know how Lewis responds to several clean shots from Diniz. And also note, Diniz has good low kicks. Derek Lewis could get chopped up to the legs a bit here. And then he starts getting chopped up, starts missing big shots. He starts getting out of position, and I think Diniz puts him out. Now, a weird comparison, right? But you remember some years ago, Mark Hunt picked him apart and knocked Derek Lewis out years and years ago. Not saying Diniz is an exact replica of Mark Hunt. It's a different style. But I don't know. There's like ever so slight similarities that I see in the offensive attack that may be enough so to catch Derek Lewis. And as well as sound defense from Diniz should be enough to deal with the Derek Lewis bombs. Now, if Diniz gets wild and Derek Lewis catches him clean, not going to be any bit surprised if Diniz gets flatlined. But if Diniz fights calculated, as I'm anticipating he will in this fight, at a more kickboxing pace, as Lewis looks to throw wide shots, he may tire a bit as Diniz slowly picks him apart. Very calculated with low kicks, throw some teeps to the body. They clinch up a bit. It's competitive in the clinch. Diniz separates from the clinch, finds some clean shots on Lewis, frustrates him, and then puts him out. I'm going to go with Diniz by KO. I'm picking him over D-Lew. Crazy pick, huh? Let me know in the comments if you're surprised by that one. Minus 175 for Diniz to beat Derek Lewis. Plus 150 for Lewis. At open, Derek Lewis was the favorite, so it's interesting to see the line flip now. Diniz the favorite here. I think Jourdain Diniz is going to pull through, man. Under 1.5 is -155. I would just prefer an under 2.5 because Diniz comes from the kickboxing background and Lewis has been longer in fights. I think that we could see a patient and calculated Diniz pick his shots properly and then find the knockout over the UFC knockout king. Like if Diniz goes out there and tries to blast them in the first round and just goes wild, I'd be shocked. Now, if he catches him with a counter shot and knocks him out in the first round, no. But if he just, sprints across the cage and is just hunting for the KO against Derek Lewis, I don't think so. I think that's kind of playing into a Derek Lewis style fight. Instead, turn it more into a kickboxing match, slow the pace a bit. Diniz should be able to pick his shots. He'll be more accurate than Derek Lewis, and I think he'll be more defensively sound, and I think he'll find the KO win. So, Jourdain Diniz to beat Derek Lewis in the absolute savage heavyweight feature. Next fight on the card, ladies matchup. It is our co-main event. It's Thug Rose Namajunas versus Ariane Blanchfield. I'm going to pick Thug Rose, especially this fight is listed as a 5-round fight still, which I'm happy about because it's, essentially a top contender fight in the women's flyweight division. Obviously, Manon Fiorot is next in line, but Thug Rose with a win is right there to fight the winner or potentially maybe a Grasso. Same with Blanchfield, to be fair. Blanchfield brings a pressure wrestling-based style. She has a very heavy grappling attack. Now, it's very effective in taking a lot of these girls down. I mean, she ran through Jessica Andrade, which was impressive. But her striking is lacking. She's an okay striker, but she's very square, and she doesn't have much, hip movement into her shot. She doesn't really turn in to any of her punches. Now, it makes sense that she isn't a great puncher because her striking is more so used to set up her grappling. But thought process that I have is, optimally speaking, Ariane Blanchfield needs to really shore up the boxing to then, have higher level of success inside of the women's flyweight division, because I see her as extremely hittable, being, relatively stiff in the way that she is. There's a lot of straight shots that could get through for Thug Rose, and I don't think it's a guarantee that every time Blanchfield is going to shoot a takedown, she ends up on top of Thug Rose. Now, Thug Rose is overall good. She has slick striking. She has good straight shots. She picks her shots nicely. She's got a speed advantage in the striking department. She's definitely got better footwork as well, and is just simply higher level in stand-up. Her grappling skill set defensively is pretty good, but there is going to be opportunities for Blanchfield to land takedowns. Thug Rose, not really an easy girl to just dominate from top position. If they do entangle in grappling positions, Thug Rose does bring a submission threat. Not likely that she submits a high-level girl like Ariane Blanchfield on the floor. I could see Thug Rose using those legs to create distance and get back up to her feet. Blanchfield is young. She's only in her mid-20s, so it's hard for me to believe that she's going to be able to put it on a primed Thug Rose for 5 rounds. Maybe if it was a 3-round fight, I'd be tempted to say Blanchfield takes 2 out of the 3. The fact that we have 5 rounds to work, I really got to favor the former world champ who does well in 5-round fights, picks shots nicely, defends takedowns rather well, defends grappling dominance rather well, has a speed advantage, has better footwork, and I think she's simply superior at this point. Blanchfield is very young in her fighting career. She's 12-2. She's 25. Thug Rose, granted, 13-6, not that many more wins, but elite level opposition time and time again. She is, 7 years older, but she's not an out of her prime 32. I think Thug Rose is going to win a hard-fought decision. Rose looked really good last time against Tracy Cortez. Now, albeit Cortez stepping in on short notice, right? Replacing, pretty dangerous Macy Barber, which is a fight that I still would like to see. I'm curious how that would go down. I think that Thug Rose can win a hard-fought 5. 49-46. The takedown defense is going to be the biggest question mark. If Blanchfield is successful time and time again with takedowns and Thug Rose can't get back up to her feet, she's going to lose the fight by a decision. But I expect Rose to be hard to get a hold of here with a slickness advantage in striking and just stand-up fighting overall, as well as decent get-up ability and offensive grappling from her back. I think Thug Rose is going to take it home. I think it's going to be 4 rounds out of the 5, potentially 3 rounds out of the 5, but I think it's going to be Thug Rose by a unanimous decision, beating Ariane Blanchfield who I think is a little young for this massive test. She just fought Manon Fiorot 6 months ago, and she lost that fight pretty much every round by a decision, all 5. Thug Rose does have a recent loss as well to Manon Fiorot, but to be fair, she was kind of competitive in that fight. She had like a broken finger early in it, and she still was able to scrap for the whole 3, and she had a couple moments. I'm going to go Thug Rose, unanimous decision. She's going to beat Erin Blanchfield, who's only 25, but still a very promising prospect, but needs to shore up the boxing to really make a run towards the better half. Not to say she needs to be an elite level boxer, but she does need to get it tighter. She's simply too square and then lacking of slickness on the feet. She's going to be getting hit a lot, and that doesn't look good on the judges' scorecards. Thug Rose, an underdog. What? I don't know why in my brain I thought she was minus 125, not plus 125. Interest in Thug Rose is going up because she's at plus money? Wow. Thug Rose as an underdog. Erin Blanchfield, the minus 145 favorite. I'm going to pick Thug Rose to win over the full distance. Over 4.5 minus 280. I think it's rather likely that we're going to get into the late stage of this fight. I think that Thug Rose lands more significant shots. She finds some clean straights, especially here. She showcases her elite level striking, and an evident speed advantage, which she has on Erin Blanchfield, is enough for her to get her hand raised. And I think she's back in title contention, especially if Valentina Shevchenko beats Manon Fiorot, then Thug Rose is more than likely the next challenger in line. If the opposite happens, maybe a rematch for Valentina versus Manon, and then Thug Rose ends up fighting a Macy Barber. So I'm going to go Thug Rose for the win. I think she's beaten Erin Blanchfield in a very interesting women's fight. Let's keep running. Next fight. It is our main event of the evening. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you all smash that like button. If you're new, subscribe to the channel. It's Brandon Moreno versus Amir Albazi. Good fight. I'm picking Brandon Moreno to beat Amir Albazi. Moreno has good boxing, Mexican-style boxing. He does well on the inside, mixing up shots, but he also has nice kicks from distance as well as good straights from range, and he does have relatively good hand speed. On top of that, he has really high-level footwork, and he's a strong wrestler. Now, on the opposite side, Amir Albazi is a powerful wrestler. He's very physically strong. He works very well in the close range. Honestly, he looks like a miniature Bilal Muhammad at times. Pressure style, very effective, but Brandon Moreno not going to be an easy guy to bully. Last time out, Albazi, he won a controversial one against Kai Kara-France. Brandon Moreno is now a step up in competition from a very skilled guy in Kai Kara-France, but Moreno's beaten Kai Kara-France before. Albeit, some years ago, fair, but Moreno's only 30. Moreno is still looking towards championship run. I don't think he's given up. Last fight, he lost a split decision to Brandon Royval. You can see it right there. Fight before that, split decision to Alexandre Pantoja, the champ. And he was competitive in both fights. I really think that we're going to see Albazi look to tie up and wrestle a lot here because Moreno is going to have a speed advantage in striking, specifically with the hands. I'm not going to be surprised if Moreno is ripping some heavy kicks, but I will say throwing body kicks heavily could put him at risk of getting taken down by Albazi, who, probably has a high chance of catching a kick here. I expect Albazi to do fairly well in close, though, but I think that Moreno is going to be better at boxing in that real close range red zone, and I think he could land more significant shots. I don't think either has a high likelihood of knocking the other out. I will say Brandon Moreno, I will rate him as a better submission fighter. If we're talking pure submission skills, he would have an edge, but I don't think it's super likely that he submits Amir Albazi. I think Albazi is going to look to pressure Brandon Moreno with straight punches. I think he's going to look to tie up and control him a bit against the cage. I do think he's going to look to time takedowns and get on top. I really feel like there's a chance Albazi is going to look to have like a maybe Merab Dvalishvili type performance. The thing is, Brandon Moreno is a high caliber wrestler. Brandon Moreno is very defensively sound in all grappling positions. And it's hard to imagine Brandon Moreno controlled for significant portions of this fight. And in a 5-round battle, I really think you have to control Moreno a lot, or you're going to have to land some significant shots on the feet. And I don't think Albazi has the hand speed to keep up in striking. And on top of that, he is the shorter guy, and he has a 2-inch reach disadvantage too. So I think Brandon Moreno's striking from distance is a positive aspect. I think Brandon Moreno's volume striking is a positive aspect. His hand speed, another positive aspect. And the ability to wrestle, especially defensively, is going to carry it home here against Amir Albazi. And it won't blow my mind if Moreno times a couple takedowns and ends up getting Albazi down. I don't think either one has a high likelihood of dominating the other on the ground. But I do think in a competitive affair, Brandon Moreno is going to have more moments. He's going to land more significant shots. And he may have a couple takedowns that he mixes in. But I also will anticipate Albazi gets him down at least once. I'm going to pick Brandon Moreno to snap the 2-fight losing streak. It's hard to imagine this Brandon Moreno, who's so close with the elite of the weight class, with the top 2 guys, losing to Amir Albazi and now having 3 losses in a row. Albazi's good, but I don't think he's getting past the Brandon Moreno test. And I do think last time out, he could have lost that fight to Kai. He hasn't fought now in 16 months, so it's been a while since his last fight. And I think it's going to be Brandon Moreno taking it on the scorecards with an edge in volume striking and a little more output. That's going to be a very powerful factor into how Brandon Moreno wins this decision. Not an easy one, though. Amir Albazi is strong. Amir Albazi is one of the strongest guys at flyweight, but Brandon Moreno's skillful grappling defense is going to carry so much weight in this matchup, and that is why I'm picking Brandon Moreno to win a hard-fought decision over Amir Albazi. Now, looking at the odds, minus 157 for Brandon Moreno, Albazi plus 137 as the underdog. I think Brandon Moreno gets a close one, 49-46, 48-47, 49-46. Those will be the 3 judges' Mystic Max scorecards for me. I anticipate this fight getting into the later stages, and over 4.5 is minus 210. I do think it's likely that this fight goes all 5 rounds. I'm going to predict that it does. I'm going to predict Moreno gets it done in competitive fashion over Albazi. The biggest fight of Albazi's life. Prior to this, biggest fight for him was Kai Kara-France. Before that, finish of Alessandro Costa, which was impressive. He looked good in that fight. Beat Francisco Figueiredo. Was a bit of a can. His brother's good, though. Zalgash Zhalmagulov decision. Malcolm Gordon win. You know, over the past 4 years, he's had, pretty much 2 solid wins amongst guys who I would consider good. I would say Kai Kara-France, exceptionally good. But, Alessandro Costa's decent. Brandon Moreno's last 5, a loss to Deiveson Figueiredo. A win over Kai Kara-France by finish. A win over Deiveson Figueiredo. He beat Deiveson Figueiredo in their series, man. He got, 2 out of the 4 fights. Pantoja, granted, Pantoja's just kryptonite. Pantoja's just different. And then Brandon Royval split decision loss. 2 split decision losses in a row. In another close fight, I think this time Brandon Moreno is on the right side of the judges' scorecard, and he beats Amir Albazi by a decision. So we're going Moreno, the assassin baby, to get back on track in Edmonton, Canada. And let's go. That's UFC this week. A good fight night. I'm looking forward to it, man. Those are the predictions. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's breakdown, capping it off with main event, Brandon Moreno coming back, call. He's going to get it back on track. I see it. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you guys smash that like button. If you guys are new, subscribe it up. I'm still riding the high after UFC 308. That was a damn amazing card. Prediction-wise, incredible, 11-2. Confident picks and lock, sweeped it. So I'm feeling very excited about this Canadian card as well. And I think we'll bring in the fire once again. I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the picks, and definitely drop some of your favorite picks in the comments. Now, if you got nothing to say, but you just enjoy the content, as always, drop a W in the chat to boost the algorithm for your boy. Thank you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.